Well, we got a message from Putin the cat for global justice, and Putin the human just doesn't live up to standards. You got to have a cat because cats are all about justice. He told me to give you a little message here. He's a good little guy, man. That's because he's a cat. He's not a person. See, this is Putin the cat, not Putin the human, right? Big difference. Now, I want to talk about something in very common sense, plain, simple terms. You know, people get all riled up about the 1% in the West. 1%, right? 1 out of 100. Oh, they got all the wealth. Oh, right? I said, you know, actually it's really the 1 basis point. Well, there is growing, it's trending like this. There's getting more, the rich are getting more and more wealthy, and the poor are getting poorer. The middle class of today looks more like the poor of the 70s today, right? That's what's going on in the United States, admittedly, right? But what's going on in Russia is not even, it's like exponentially worse. And here's my major contention about propaganda that comes out of Russia today, the state-owned news outlet, and you know, the people with the British accents that they hire to go on the radio waves and talk about how bad the West is and all the banksters. It's exponentially worse in Russia. And they don't say one damn thing about it because it's a propaganda outlet owned by Vladimir Putin, elected for the 3rd time. And boy, he cried at that election. Oh boy, that was great. But anyway, let me just get you the little factoid. So you talk about the 1%, and then there's the 1 basis point. Well, in Russia, you got the 1 basis point of the 1 basis point, less than 1/10,000th of a percentage point. 1/10,000th are billionaires. There's 110 billionaires in Russia with 143 million people. Almost 94% of the people in Russia have net worth of under $10,000. And of the largest slice, you might have maybe 100,000, where there's like of that 6% that's left. But then the sliver of billionaires who have 35% of all the wealth in the country, 35%, more than 1/3, is less than 1 basis point of 1 basis point. Okay? It's 8/100,000ths of 1% that have 35% of the wealth in Russia. And you know what? The ones they knocked out that were the bad guys before, you know, you're going to say, oh, well, you know, we're Jewish. Like Boris, remember Boris who got killed? He supposedly hung himself in the UK. Boris Berezovsky, he almost got killed a couple times. There was various attempts on his life. I mean, there was a guy even in Morocco. They had a pile of people of dressed up as black ninjas about, I don't know, it was about 10 years ago, whatever it was. And they stormed the palace and they burned the whole place down or something like that. It was some place, I think. I forgot if it was Morocco or whatever it was. But the state, it's not a mafia. Holy shit. The mafia is anti-government. It is the government. Basically, Russia is like the czars of old. And you know, this pretty much proves the contention of Major Anatoly Golitsyn that they were changing to a more of a capitalistic model. Not because they're saying that the West won or anything like that. It's because they want to do more for themselves. The elite in Russia want more for themselves, and they find that they get more for themselves by befriending the West. They actually get more for themselves by befriending the West. So they adapted a more successful model, which is a type of hybrid capitalism. So the apparatus on the top of Russia, the state itself, and you know, they actually call this, even around Yeltsin, they call it the family. Now, of the billions of wealth, the 110 billionaires that are in Russia, Vladimir Putin by far is the wealthiest. He's got to be like between 40 and 50 billion dollars. He owns vast natural gas resources, and he has other people manage it for him. I mean, he walks around like he supposedly is a pauper. And remember that thing even with Cyprus? When I remember, I even knew way long time ago that was a tax haven for the wealthy, but also the Russian wealthy. because they avoid import-export taxes and stuff like that if they have companies set up in there. And also the corporate tax is much, 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 much lower than the rest of Europe. Putin knew all about this. And, you know, they got all their money out of it before the haircut happened in the banking system. But, you know, the disparity between rich and poor is your simplest test to tell you what's going on in Russia. You see, they hire Russian state-owned television or internet avenue, or whatever the hell it is, Russia Today, hires these UK British accent speakers and Abby Martin, who's American, to throw dirt on the West. And yeah, maybe some of that's true, but you're naive as all hell to not consider the source. And you know, Major Golitsyn has stated that the West doesn't really understand what they're dealing with. See, people in the New World Order in the West are using Russia to actually combine Russia in with a global New World Order. But the way it's probably going to turn out is Russia's going to actually stick them in the back, and the leaders in Russia, the small leaders, you know, the small minority of leaders, it's going to stick them in the back, and they're going to outmaneuver them, because I think they're far shrewder than the Western leaders. I think they are. They're not shrewder than me, and they're not shrewder than Putin the Cat. Because cat's got cat senses, and you know, it's absolutely no way you're going to fool a cat. A cat is way smarter than a human by far. So Putin the Cat is on the ball all the time with this type of stuff. But just use a little common sense that when you got less than 1 basis point of 1 basis point has 35% of the wealth in the country, that doesn't even compare to the United States. It's ridiculous. It's so lopsided. It's beyond ridiculous. And Putin is the wealthiest guy there. And everybody's like worshiping him like he's the best thing around in the West. There's loads of people in the West like, oh, he's our hero. He's exposing everything that's bad that's going on. It's almost like an arts criminal exposing a criminal doing misdemeanors. I mean, that's what it almost makes the West look like. It makes him look like nothing. There is no comparison between the wealth, the way the wealth is distributed in Russia and the way it's distributed in the United States. Even though the United States is not even on top of the list as far as wealth distribution, it's not. It's not. Actually, it's better off in Switzerland and Japan or something than it is here in the United States. But in Russia, it's ridiculously lopsided. Like I said, 1%, and you know what? I'd like to see a major protest against those people in Russia. And everybody be over there and say, oh, it's staged by the West. Oh, God, yeah, it's all just a Western propaganda. You're talking 35% of the wealth in Russia is owned by less than 1 basis point of 1 basis point. In history, it's never even been that lopsided. It's never been that lopsided. And, you know, it's quite obvious that these aren't just some rich people. This is the state that owns it. And, you know, who heads the state? Putin. You know, it may be that there's people behind the scenes that actually control him, but that guy has absolutely ridiculous amounts of wealth. Ridiculous. And it makes the Rothschilds look like nothing, too. It makes them look like nothing. But if you start digging back into when they actually fell apart in the Soviet Union, you know, it was interesting, too, that you know, they might not be able to pay the electric bill on a naval's yard or something like that, but they were still developing the most high-tech weapons, biological, chemical, and nuclear, underground, as you know, same thing, even more so. It's like they let all the conventional forces go to disarray. That's what happened, basically, you know. And of course, you know, most of our people bit into that story, but some of them didn't. And there's a lot of evidence to show, you know, from defectors and things like that, they haven't really stopped their plan for global domination. But you have to understand, what kind of mentality does a person have that's like that? If you have most of the people, like there's a lot of people in Russia don't even drive a car, don't have access to internet or nothing. They survive off the land. There's a lot of farmers out there. There's a lot of workers, you know, they're not making much money. They're just basically survival. The population is going down because it's like, people don't feel good about the future, And yet you got people, a very, very few amount of people that have 35% of the wealth in the whole country. What kind of person do you think those kind of people are? With Putin actually being probably the top guy in Russia as far as wealth goes. And what kind of people you think those kind of people are? You think they're going to do the favors for the West? No, not at all. Not at all. If they did anything for the Russian people, they would take it from the West and give it to the Russian people. No skin off their back. You know what I mean? That's exactly what they do. So all the Westerners that run to Putin in RT like it's the gospel, I have to say this. It's not the gospel, and if it's like everything else, because people are naive as all hell. I don't know what to tell them. It's like you're talking to an insect, a cockroach. They're never going to get it. They're never going to get it. They're going to pull out. They're going to argue with you for days on end. They're going to say no, no, no. But if you look back in history, look what happened. Look what happened. It looks like the spread of communism has never stopped at all. It's going on domestically in the United States, but also the power of the global of where the real power is on the globe is actually going more and more to China and Russia. And there's no difference between exactly what they were before. They didn't change, and communism didn't fall. It just morphed into something a little bit different. That's all. It actually got stronger by injecting a little bit of capitalism into it. But there's no human rights. That's bullshit. There's no human rights. So the West is becoming more and more communistic. And then you got a lot of idiots over here totally like listening to Russia Today with their, broadcasters hired by, traitors from America like Abbey and the British people that are talking on those stations. And guess what? They have absolutely no use for Americans at all. None. They're acting like they're freaking reporting something like they care. They don't care in the least. They don't give a shit in the least. Not at all. Not at all. That whole news station is funded by the state. It's funded by Putin. The wealthiest man probably on earth. Probably is. Or if he's not, he's damn close to it. And the other 110 billionaires that run Russia, they got 10,000ths of a percentage of the population runs 35% of the wealth. They're as cold as they get. They're as cold as they get. If they saw 1 million starving people, they wouldn't give them a crumb. That's the kind of people you're dealing with. The only people they knocked out of that circle were Jews. The only people they did. The only people they knocked out of that circle that had a lot of money, and actually they didn't have anywhere near the money as Vladimir Putin. Maybe they were billionaires, but they weren't as strong as Vladimir Putin. No way in hell. No way in hell. He just grabbed what they got, and he's running with the ball. It's old hardliner communism with a human face and a little bit of capitalistic dressing on the outside. That's all it is. That's all it is. Yet, we got people in the United States that are just going to, they're going to buy into it like naive as all hell. But that's the reason the communists always succeeded. You look at the Bolshevik Revolution. When that was going on, there was plenty of old-time Russians that were in the military and the police that were well-armed that could have stopped it. But the Bolsheviks assured them that they weren't going to do nothing to them. Oh, no. Oh, no. It's just like anything. It's like, you want to buy the bullshit line? Go right ahead. But I'm not buying it. So that's the way I look at it. And it's like you have to be a little more shrewd. And the problem is, in the West, we got so many people that are armchair debaters. They have absolutely no clue of the shrewdness and viciousness of the people that run Russia. They have absolutely no concept of what kind of wealth that is and what it takes to hold it. That kind of wealth is not held by these people because basically the mafia, the organized crime, I don't even want to call it the mafia, but basically the rackets that run Russia are the state themselves. is the state themselves. Russia, the Soviet Union, never really fell. It just morphed into something else. That's all it is. It's been planned all along, and right now they're telling the West that, oh yeah, you got it so bad and all this kind of crap's going on. It's more than 100 times worse than Russia. It's way worse. It's way worse. And the lazy-ass Americans can easily fix the problems here, even just by voting for another party. They can easily do that, but they don't. They don't. They stick with blue team, red team, and they're both owned. They don't even want. Most of them don't even bother to vote. So you know it's going to happen. You know it's going to happen. But if you talk about unparalleled wealth disparity, it's Russia. I don't even think it's ever been that way. It's almost like, that's like maybe going back, probably even worse than when you talk about in ancient times when you had the pharaohs or something like that. It's probably more lopsided than that. It's like you got 110 people. You got less than 1 basis point of 1 basis point owning 35% of the wealth in Russia. And 94% of the people have less than $10,000 net worth. Net worth. That's so lopsided it's beyond belief. A lot of people in Russia don't even drive a car. That's why they don't use. That's why they don't even use that much crude oil themselves domestically. A lot of people in Russia don't even drive a car. When you're looking on the internet, you see all this cool stuff going on in Moscow and the luxury cars. That's only a few people. That's a few people. That's not your average Russian. A lot of Russians don't even have access to the internet. Way less. It's a very small minority compared to what's in the United States. Practically everybody in the United States has access to the internet. They don't have access to what's going on. They don't even have access to what's going on. They're too busy just trying to survive. So what kind of people you think own Russia, and what kind of people you think own Russia today? You think they're doing anybody in the West a favor? No. Their goal is to destroy and dismantle the West. And anybody that works for Russia today is a conscious person that is working towards that goal. They're not alternative. They're not alternative. They're working for basically a czar that hates the West. A vicious czar that hates the West. That's what it comes down to. People with that kind of wealth got no heart. That's exactly what it comes down to. And I'm telling you, the only people that actually got slammed in Russia that were wealthy were Jewish. Were Jewish. And, they had a lot of money, but they don't have nothing compared to what Putin's got. Putin's got many times more wealth. And the only guy that was really a good critic of Putin was this Boris Berezovsky. And look what happened with him. Putin finally got him, right? So, I don't know. You can't reach the insects. You can't reach the insects, so I don't know. A few people in America know what's going on, but most of them don't. Alternative media, especially coming from Russia today, is total BS.